The thing about perfect marriages is that they're usually anything but perfect. Trust me, I should know. I've been living in one for 16 years. On paper, mine looks like the kind of life people would scroll past on Facebook and mutter, "Lucky bastard," under their breath. Nice suburban home just outside of Boston, a beautiful wife who still turns heads at school fundraisers, a teenage son who, despite the attitude that comes with being 16, hasn't yet gone off the rails. And me, Connor Dempsey, a carpenter who used to wear a badge and a gun, now just trying to build something steady with my hands instead of tearing apart crime scenes with my head. From the outside, perfect. From the inside, well, perfection has cracks, and once you start noticing them, it's all you can see. It was 3:00 a.m. on a Tuesday in October when I realized just how wide those cracks had become. I was lying in bed, staring at the faint light from our digital alarm clock, when I heard the steady, rapid tapping of my wife Stephanie's thumbs on her phone screen. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, 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 stifled giggle. Not exactly the lullaby you hope for when you're trying to sleep. Stephanie was curled up on her side, the blue glow of her phone painting her face in ghostly light. She looked like a teenager under the covers, sneaking messages past curfew. Except she was 40, my wife, and the only fiction in our house wasn't in her phone, it was the smile she gave me every morning over coffee. "Work emergency?" I asked, my voice low, cutting through the darkness. She jumped, the way you do when you're caught with your hand in the collection plate at church. Her eyes darted to me, then back to her screen. "Oh, you scared me," she whispered. "Yeah, just client stuff. You know how at Island." The problem was, I did know. Sales executives at medical device companies don't handle 3 a.m. emergencies unless someone's pacemaker started malfunctioning in the middle of the night. And even then, there's usually a tech team for that. I didn't say any of that though. I just watched as she rolled onto her back, clutching the phone to her chest like it was a secret diary. "Go back to sleep, Con. I'll be done in a minute." But I was already wide awake. See, once you've spent 10 years as a Boston PD detective, the instincts never really go away. 5 years out of the force, and I could still smell a lie like smoke in the wind. And right now, my bedroom reeked of it. The tapping started again. Quick little bursts, followed by pauses just long enough for her to be reading something back. Every now and then, a tiny laugh slipped from her throat. My wife, the same woman who most nights claimed she was too tired for small talk, was now apparently finding late-night comedy gold on her phone. I'd noticed the changes, of course. You don't live with someone for nearly 2 decades and miss things like that. 3 months ago, she suddenly cared about working out again, going to spin classes and Pilates after work. She started buying clothes that were a size too small and then, annoyingly, managed to squeeze into them like she'd discovered the fountain of youth. And then there was her phone, always face down on the counter, always tucked in her purse, zipped up tight. She angled the screen away from me like I was the nosy neighbor instead of her husband. "Stephanie," I said quietly. The tapping stopped. "Yeah? Who are you texting?" There was a pause, just a second, but long enough to tell me she was choosing her answer. "Troy, my boss. He's having issues with the Henderson account." Troy Melman. 40 years old, married, 2 kids, the kind of guy who lived at the gym and let you know it. I'd met him exactly once at the Christmas party last year. He was the type who laughed too loud at his own jokes and thought touching women's shoulders mid-conversation made him charming. I remembered because I'd spent most of that night imagining breaking his nose. "The Henderson account," I repeated flatly. At 3 in the morning? He's in California, remember? Time difference. Except he wasn't. I knew for a fact that Troy lived in Newton, about 20 minutes away. I'd seen his address on the company directory when I picked Stephanie up from work last month. "Right," I said. "California." She nodded, set her phone on the nightstand, and curled up against me. Her head rested on my shoulder, the silk of her new nightgown cool against my arm. Another purchase I hadn't seen her wear for me. "Sorry, baby, I know it's annoying. This account is just really important." I kissed the top of her head and forced a smile she couldn't see. "It's okay. Just try to get some sleep." Her breathing slowed after a while, soft and even. But I didn't close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling and thought about all the little red flags waving in my face the past few months. Late nights, guarded phone calls, lingerie bags hidden in the back of her closet. She thought she was clever. Maybe she even thought I was too busy sanding cabinets and worrying about bills to notice. But I noticed. God help me, I noticed everything. When the sun finally broke through the blinds, I was already sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, staring out at our quiet street. Medford wasn't fancy, but it was home. Blue-collar families, young professionals, people trying to make something of themselves. It was the kind of neighborhood where kids rode bikes until dark and neighbors waved across driveways. Jamie shuffled into the kitchen, hair sticking up in 3 different directions. 16 years old and all elbows, sarcasm and hormones. But he was mine, smart, stubborn and loyal. Too much like me, people said. Morning, Dad. He grabbed a bowl from the cabinet and started pouring cereal. Morning, kiddo. Sleep okay? He shrugged. Better than you, apparently. Mom said you were up half the night. Your mother was up too, I said carefully. Yeah, I heard her talking on the phone around 3, thought maybe Grandma Lynn was sick or something. Grandma Lynn had been dead for 6 years. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth, and watched my son shovel cereal into his. The innocence in his voice cut deeper than any knife. He trusted us to tell him the truth about the world. And right now, I wasn't even sure if his family was real anymore. Something cold settled in my stomach. The kind of cold you don't shake, no matter how hot your coffee island. Because once you've caught the scent of a lie, you can't unsmell it. And once you suspect the person lying is the one you've built your life around, your perfect marriage starts looking a whole lot like a crime scene. And I'd spent too many years solving those to ignore the evidence piling up in my own damn house. The thing about lies is they rarely stand on their own. They breed, multiply, spread like cracks in a windshield until one small hit makes the whole thing shatter. By the time I got Jamie out the door for school that morning, Stephanie was still upstairs getting ready for work. I sat at the table with my second cup of coffee, staring at the condensation on the side of the glass door leading out to the deck. The house was quiet, too quiet, and my mind replayed everything from the night before on a loop. The tapping, the giggles, the California excuse, my son's offhand comment about hearing her on the phone. If I'd been wearing a badge, I would have called it what it was. Probable cause. Stephanie came downstairs a little after 8, heels clicking against the hardwood. She wore a navy pencil skirt and a white blouse I'd never seen before, tucked neatly at the waist. Her hair was styled, her makeup sharp, the kind of effort she usually reserved for company events or girls' nights out. She looked good. Too good. You're up early, she said, smiling as she poured herself coffee. Couldn't sleep. She nodded like she understood, but her eyes darted toward her phone on the counter. Face down, of course. You've got a busy day? I asked casually, watching her stir cream into the mug. Yeah. Couple meetings, then maybe drinks with the team. You know how it's island. I sipped my coffee. Slow, steady. Team. Huh? That include Troy? Her spoon froze mid-stir, just for a second, but I caught it. She recovered quickly, laughed like it was nothing. Yeah, probably. He's my boss, Con. Of course he's there. Of course. Always there. She kissed my cheek before heading out, her perfume lingering in the air long after the door shut. I sat there another 20 minutes, just listening to the silence and letting the rage simmer beneath my ribs. When you've been a detective, you learn not to trust coincidences. Coincidences are the lazy man's explanation. And I wasn't about to be lazy with this, so I started small. I went upstairs, grabbed her laptop from the desk in the spare room and opened the lid. Password protected. She'd never had a password before. That was new. I set it down and pulled out my phone instead, scrolling through contacts until I found Troy's name. I'd saved it last Christmas after we swapped numbers in case of work emergencies. Never thought I'd use it. I stared at his number for a long time before hitting copy. Then I pasted it into a reverse lookup site, address Newton, Massachusetts. The same one I remembered from the company directory. Not California, not even close. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my jaw. She'd lied, flat out, without blinking. That was strike 2. Around noon, I drove into town to pick up lumber for a custom cabinet job. I was measuring boards when my buddy Mike spotted me. Connor, hey man, how's the wife? The wife. The question people toss around like it's harmless. I forced a grin. She's good. Busy with work. He chuckled. Aren't they all? Mine's got me eating salads 4 nights a week now, says it's a lifestyle change. What's Stephanie got you doing? I didn't answer, not really, just shrugged and said she's been hitting the gym a lot lately. Good for her, Mike said, clapping me on the shoulder. Keeps you on your toes, huh? Yeah, something like that. On the drive home, I couldn't stop replaying her voice in my head. California. Time difference. She'd said it so casually, like she'd practiced the line in the mirror, like she'd expected me to ask. That's the thing about liars. The best ones rehearse, and Stephanie was getting damn good. That night, dinner was meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Comfort food. The kind of meal that had carried us through lean years and long nights with a newborn. Jamie inhaled his portion like the growing teenager he was, then excused himself to play Xbox. Stephanie and I sat at the table, plates half finished between us. She was scrolling her phone again, thumb flicking across the screen with the speed of someone desperate to escape reality. Anything interesting? I asked. She blinked, looked up like she'd forgotten I was there. What? Oh, just work stuff. Still the Henderson account? Her fork clinked against the plate. Why are you asking me so many questions, Con? I held her gaze, calm, steady. Because you're up at 3 in the morning texting your boss and I'm your husband. Forgive me if I find that a little unusual. Her face hardened. You don't trust me? I set my fork down. I trust you. I don't trust the situation. She pushed her chair back, standing abruptly. I can't do this right now. I've had a long day. And just like that, she was gone, retreating upstairs, leaving her half-eaten dinner behind. I sat there alone, staring at the cooling mashed potatoes, and felt something shift in my chest. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something colder, something heavier. It was the realization that my marriage was no longer a partnership, it was an investigation, and I wasn't sure if I was building a case to save it or to end it. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the only sound was the faint hum of Jamie's game console upstairs, I went into the living room and sat on the couch. Stephanie's purse was on the coffee table, the zipper pulled shut. I stared at it for a long time, wrestling with myself. Old habits die hard. As a cop, you search bags, you flip through drawers, you read between the lines. As a husband, you're not supposed to. But I wasn't just a husband anymore. Slowly, carefully, I pulled the purse toward me and opened it. Wallet, lipstick, keys, and the phone. Locked, of course. Still, one thing caught my eye. A receipt. Crumpled, shoved between gum wrappers. I smoothed it out. Hotel bar. Boston. Saturday night. But Saturday night, she'd told me she was at a co-worker's birthday dinner. My stomach dropped. That was strike 3, and the game had officially changed. There's a saying we used to throw around at the precinct, once a cop, always a cop. You can take the badge off your chest, but you can't scrape it out of your blood. And as I sat there with that hotel bar receipt in my hand, every instinct I'd ever honed on the force came roaring back like it had just been waiting for me to call. Stephanie was lying to me, that much was certain. The only real question was how deep the lie went. Was it just a fling with Troy? Or was I staring at something uglier, something that could take the whole foundation of our family down with it? I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. The next morning, I watched her leave for work. She kissed my cheek at the door, smiled like nothing was wrong, and walked out with her purse over her shoulder. Same routine as always, except now I knew her smile was a mask. The second she pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my jacket and keys. Old Connor, the carpenter, the husband, the suburban dad would have gone to his workshop, sanded some maple, maybe lost himself in the grain of the wood until the thoughts went away. But Detective Connor, he knew better. You don't ignore evidence, you follow it. And that's exactly what I did. Her office was in Cambridge, a glass and steel building sandwiched between biotech startups and overpriced coffee shops. I parked across the street in my old Ford, baseball cap pulled low, and watched. Stakeouts are 90% boredom, 10% adrenaline. I'd spent weeks of my life sitting in cars with bad coffee and worse sandwiches, waiting for a target to make a move. Compared to that, following my wife should have been easy. But it wasn't. It felt like I was betraying her by even being there, like I was trespassing on my own life. Except hadn't she already done that to me? I saw her car pull into the lot around 8:40. She stepped out, heels clicking, phone already in her hand. She laughed at something on the screen before disappearing inside. I waited. At lunch, she came out with 2 women from her team. They grabbed salads from the cafe next door. No sign of Troy, no sign of anything unusual. By 5, she was back at her car, but instead of heading home, she drove east toward Boston. My pulse kicked up. I followed. The hotel was one I knew. Nice, but not luxury. Business class. The kind of place where companies booked conferences or out-of-towners stayed for conventions. She pulled into the lot, parked, and got out. I watched her smooth her skirt, check her reflection in the side mirror, and head inside. I didn't move for 5 minutes. Just sat there gripping the steering wheel, the heat blasting in my face. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. Finally, I killed the engine and followed. Inside, the lobby was quiet. A few travelers checking in, a bored clerk tapping on a keyboard. And there, near the bar, was Stephanie. She wasn't alone. Troy stood beside her, tall and smug, one hand resting just a little too casually on the small of her back as they talked. She laughed at something he said, tilting her head the way she used to with me, the way she hadn't in months. It felt like someone had swung a sledgehammer into my chest. I turned and walked out before either of them could see me. Back in my truck, I sat in the dark and tried to breathe. Anger boiled in my veins, hot and reckless. The old me, the detective me, wanted to storm back in there, drag him out by the collar, and demand answers from her in front of the whole damn bar. But I couldn't. Not yet, because anger gets you sloppy, and sloppy gets you blindsided. If I was going to confront her, I needed more than suspicions and a crumpled receipt. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. So I made a plan. The next day, I dug my old lockbox out of the garage. Inside were the tools I hadn't touched since leaving the force. A Nikon DSLR with a long lens, a digital recorder, and a notebook full of contacts. Old habits, old weapons. I charged the camera battery, tested the lens, and felt something awaken in me. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was an investigator again. Over the next week, I tracked her. Not every day I had jobs to finish, bills to pay, but enough. I learned her patterns. Mondays and Wednesdays, she really did go to the gym. Tuesdays and Thursdays, late nights at the office, actually meant meeting Troy at that same hotel bar. Fridays, she came straight home, almost like she was rewarding herself for a week of deceit. I photographed everything. Her walking into the hotel, him meeting her at the curb, the way they leaned too close at the bar, whispering over drinks, no kisses, no hand-holding, nothing overt. They were careful, smarter than I wanted them to be, but the body language told the story. I testified in court cases with less. At night, I lay awake while she slept beside me, her breathing slow and steady. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how long it had been going on. 3 months? 6? Longer? I replayed every memory, every excuse, the girls' nights out, the sudden interest in Pilates, the new lingerie tucked in the back of her drawer. Had it all been him? And the darker question, the one that twisted like a knife in my gut. Did she love him? One evening, I was sitting in my truck across from the hotel when my phone buzzed. It was Jamie. Dad? Mum said she's working late again. Can I order pizza? I swallowed hard, watching Stephanie walk into the lobby with Troy at her side. Yeah, kiddo, pizza's fine. Cool. You want me to save you some? Yeah, I said, forcing my voice steady. Save me a slice. When he hung up, I dropped the phone on the passenger seat and pressed my hands against the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Because the truth was, I wasn't just investigating Stephanie anymore. I was protecting Jamie, shielding him from the fallout that was coming. And whether I liked it or not, the fallout was coming fast. By the end of the second week, I had enough evidence to know the truth. Maybe not enough to win a courtroom case, but enough to confirm what my gut had been screaming since that first night at 3 a.m. Stephanie was cheating. With Troy, the only thing left was deciding what to do with the truth. The hardest part about catching someone in a lie isn't finding the evidence. It's living with it once you have it. For 2 weeks, I'd been trailing Stephanie, photographing her meetings with Troy, logging her excuses against her movements. The case was airtight in my mind. But every night, when she came home and kissed my cheek, when she asked me how Jamie's homework was going or what I wanted for dinner, I had to play along, pretend. Smile like nothing was wrong. Pretending, I realized, was the cruelest part. One Saturday morning, Stephanie announced she had to run into the office for a few hours. Jamie was at a friend's house, so I had the place to myself. The second her car turned the corner, I went upstairs to our bedroom. I didn't plan it. My body just moved. Muscle memory from my detective days. You see a window of opportunity, you take it. Her dresser drawers were neat, organized the way she liked them. But in the back of the top drawer, under folded sweaters, I found a small bag from a lingerie store downtown. 2 sets, still with tags. Not the kind she ever wore for me. In her jewelry box, tucked under a pile of earrings, was another receipt. Dinner for 2. Italian restaurant in the North End. The date? The same night she'd told me she was at a team meeting. My hand shook as I folded the slip back into place. I wasn't surprised, no, I'd already known. But seeing it spelled out in ink, undeniable, was like a blade twisting in my chest. That night, she came home humming to herself, carrying takeout Chinese like nothing had changed. She was radiant, flushed, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Big day? I asked, keeping my voice even. She smiled, too wide, too rehearsed. Just productive. You know how it island. Yeah, I knew. We ate together, her chatting about office gossip while I nodded at all the right spots. Inside though, I was cataloguing every gesture, every glance at her phone, every careful pause. She was slipping. And I was catching every slip. A few days later, I decided to push the line, test her story. You said Troy's in California, right? I asked casually over breakfast. She was buttering toast, not even looking up. Funny, I ran into him at Home Depot yesterday. Her knife froze mid-swipe, just for half a second, but I saw it. She laughed it off, shaking her head. You must have been mistaken. Maybe it was someone who looked like him. Yeah, I said slowly. Maybe. She didn't meet my eyes the rest of the meal. At night, I started going through her phone. Not directly, I wasn't about to risk her catching me, but I watched. Paid attention. Her messages lit up after midnight, always the same notification bubble. T. She never left it face up long enough for me to read, but I didn't need to. One night, she fell asleep with the phone clutched in her hand. I waited until her breathing evened out, then gently slid it free. Locked, of course. But the preview on the last message hadn't cleared. Can't wait to see you again. Same place? My stomach twisted. I set it back exactly as I found it and lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls of my marriage close in on me. By now, the weight of it all was pressing down on me so hard it was spilling into other parts of my life. At the shop, I measured wrong, cut boards too short, sanded until my knuckles bled because I wasn't paying attention. My clients started noticing. You all right, Connor? They'd ask, concern in their voices, and I'd smile, that same fake smile Stephanie wore every morning, and say, yeah, just tired. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were both liars now. One Thursday, after another so-called late meeting, Stephanie came home buzzing with energy. She slipped off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine, and curled up on the couch. Con, she said suddenly, eyes bright, we should take a trip. Just the two of us. It's been forever. Her words cut deep. A trip. With me. While she was sneaking off to hotels with him. Yeah? I asked carefully. Yeah. Maybe the Cape. Or Vermont. Just us. I studied her face, searching for cracks in the mask. For a second, I almost believed her. Almost believed that maybe this was guilt, that maybe she wanted to fix what she'd broken. But then, her phone buzzed on the table. She grabbed it so fast, you'd think it was a grenade, smiled at the screen, tapped a reply before slipping it back down. And I knew the trip wasn't about us. It was about covering her tracks. I started tailing Troy, too. If Stephanie was careful, he was reckless. I saw him at the gym, flirting with the trainer. At a bar in Somerville, buying shots for a waitress half his age. He wasn't just cheating with my wife, he was a serial offender, the kind of guy who thrived on the thrill. It made me hate him more, but it also gave me an edge, because men like Troy, they always slip up. The final straw came the following weekend. Stephanie told me she was going to a co-worker's baby shower, dressed up, gift bag in hand. She kissed my cheek and left. An hour later, I was parked outside the hotel, camera in hand, and there she was, walking into the lobby, laughing at something Troy whispered in her ear. She wasn't carrying a gift bag anymore. I snapped the photo. My hands were steady, my focus sharp. A clean shot, her smiling up at him, his arm brushing hers. It was the kind of picture you couldn't explain away. The photo sat on my desk like a loaded gun. I stared at it for hours, my thumb hovering over the power button on the camera, replaying that single moment over and over again. Stephanie, smiling up at Troy like a teenager sneaking out for her first kiss. Him, leaning down, owning the space, like it was his birthright. There was no ambiguity, no wiggle room, no maybe you misunderstood. This was the truth, captured in pixels. And I had to decide, keep pretending, or finally let the truth bleed out into the open. The next morning, Stephanie woke up before me, humming to herself as she brushed her hair. She picked out the blue dress I'd always liked on her. She didn't know that I knew, didn't know that the walls of her little world were closing in. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, the camera in front of me, waiting. When she came downstairs, purse slung over her shoulder, she froze. "What's this?" she asked, voice pitched too high, eyes darting to the camera. "Sit," I said. She blinked. "Connor, sit." Something in my tone must have hit her, because she obeyed. Slowly, she set her purse down and lowered herself into the chair opposite me. I turned the camera toward her and hit the button. The screen lit up with the photo, her smile, Troy's arm brushing hers, the lobby lights catching the shine in her hair, her face drained of color. I can explain," she stammered. I cut in. My voice surprised even me, cold, sharp. Like the Connor I'd been back when interrogations were my daily bread. "You've been lying for weeks, months. This is just proof of what I already knew." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like." "Don't insult me, Steph." My hand slammed the table harder than I meant to. She flinched. "I was a cop. I know tells. I know excuses. I know when someone's lying. And you're the worst liar I've ever seen." Her lips trembled. She looked down, then back up, defiant. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing him. But it's not serious. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to..." "Not serious?" My laugh came out bitter, broken. "You sneak off to hotels. You text him at midnight. You buy lingerie for him. Not me. You call that not serious?" She froze. The lingerie detail had hit her like a slap. She hadn't known I'd found it. Her eyes hardened. "So what, Connor? You've been spying on me? Following me? Digging through my things?" "Yes," I said simply, "because you stopped giving me a choice." The silence between us stretched, heavy and poisonous. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't want to hurt you." "You already did," I said. "Over and over. Every night you came home and kissed me with his breath still on your lips. Every lie you told about work. Every fake smile at our dinner table. You think that didn't hurt?" She covered her face with her hands, sobbing, and for a moment, God help me for a moment, I almost reached across the table, almost comforted her like I had 100 times before. But then I saw the photo again, and the softness inside me turned to steel. "Does Jamie know?" I asked. Her head shot up, eyes wide. "No, God no, I'd never..." "Good," I said. My voice was low, dangerous, because if you drag him into this, Steph, I swear. I stopped myself, the words choking off. I wasn't the kind of man who made threats, not to her, not in front of our son. But she understood. Her hands twisted in her lap. "Connor, please, we can work through this. Couples do. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I leaned forward. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is one bad night, one bad choice. What you did, that's not a mistake. That's a decision you made, over and over with him." Her tears slowed. Her breathing steadied. She wiped her cheeks and looked at me, and I saw it then, the shift, the guilt curdling into anger. "You're not perfect either," she spat. "You buried yourself in work. You barely looked at me for years. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I just woke up one day and decided to blow up our marriage? You pushed me away." Her words landed like blows, because a part of me knew she wasn't wrong. But instead of guilt, I felt something else. Clarity. "I pushed you away," I said slowly. "And instead of talking to me, you chose him." She didn't reply. I stood, pushing back from the table. My chair scraped against the tile, loud and final. "I'm done," I said. "Pack a bag. You're leaving tonight." Her jaw dropped. "What? You can't!" "This is my house," I cut in. Jamie's house. You don't get to bring him into this circus. You don't get to lie to his face every day and think it's fine. You want Troy? Go. Be with him. But you don't get to have both. Her face twisted, rage and desperation fighting for control. If you do this, if you throw me out, I'll… You'll what? I asked, stepping closer. My voice dropped to a whisper. Lie some more? Tell Jamie it's my fault? Go ahead. But he'll see through you eventually, just like I did. She left that night, packed 2 suitcases, slammed the door, and disappeared into the dark. Jamie cried when I told him Mom was staying somewhere else for a while. I held him, my chest aching, and promised him it wasn't his fault, that he was loved, that no matter what, he had me. But when he finally fell asleep, I sat alone in the silence, the photo still glowing on the camera screen, and I wondered if catching the truth had really set me free or if it had just left me with a different kind of prison.